Good morning. I had a late night last night. So right now I haven't taken down my window covers, but my seat is back. Yep. I can get a little deeper than this, but I pretty much slept like this and I was fine. Oops, I kind of covered the camera for a second there. So, the last couple of weeks, and maybe because I'm stage managing, so my days are getting like super long, I've sort of fallen back into a huge bad food habit, and that's going out and buying food. And one of the big things I did when I was trying to like mentally change myself from feeling trapped in homelessness to feeling like I had power over the situation was I bought a camping stove. And I got a camping stove and a cooler. Ultimately, the whole cooler thing just didn't work out for me because I was like, this whole ice thing takes too much maintenance. And I was like, screw it. And so, yeah, I was just like, screw it. I'm not even going to deal with this whole like refilling ice, buying ice. I was like, there's plenty of ways to eat non-perishable food. So I went entirely non-perishable, but I got a camping stove because I was like, that means, I could even buy things like day of that might need refrigeration, but, you can cook them, canned foods, 90% of the time I'm using like my little camping pot and the camping stove when I use the camping stove. My first camping stove, the one that got stolen, I did use that in a park. I was totally inspired by YouTube where people had like these really cool like cooking moments out in parks and were basically, left alone to do their thing and heat up a meal. But anyway, so I go to a park. It seemed like it was going to be like totally cool. I pull out my camping stove. I'm feeling good. At that time, I was still trying to refrigerate, so I had a bunch of like stuff in the cooler. I don't even remember what I made. But I know it involved opening a can, and I know it involved some stuff I was trying to like keep refrigerated before I kind of said screw it and stopped dealing with that. But anyway, a guy saw me cooking. He comes over and, he starts talking to me, and I don't know where this guy came from. And one of the things he does is he gives me information on a homeless shelter. And he's fairly well-meaning. I was feeling very super confident and sort of out of the mental previous state I was in up until that moment. Because then I was like, oh, he saw me and saw a homeless person. And the interesting thing about this is I turn around and this guy pulls up in a van. It definitely wasn't a, hashtag Vanlife fancy van. It was an older van that he was definitely living out of. He was getting some water from a little spigot that was at the park. And he pulls out this setup where he's like cooking some food on a, what do you call it? A George Foreman. That's what he had. Which kind of amused me because like, bro, we're kind of doing the same thing here. I guess he didn't see my car as something somebody could like live in, because we ended up talking and I was like, yeah, I'm just like, staying in my car right now. And I didn't like feed him any sob story where I was like, oh my God, I'm struggling so much. And yet he openly tells me how he volunteers at this homeless shelter, when to most people's perception, he is homeless. And that, he was like, this shelter, like, women and children, they get housed real fast. Now, first of all, I really doubt that. Maybe women with children get housed real fast. I don't know about women and children getting housed real fast because, whatever. I'm not going to go through that stuff. Like, when I first got in the situation and I was, like, struggling. As much as I didn't want to let that blow me, I'll be honest, it kind of did. Like, it got to me in my soul a little bit. And I felt like I took away my power. I have cooked on my new stove since then. I cooked once more on my old stove before it got stolen since that moment. But the second time it was in my car, and I was trying to hide and do it, and I kind of ruined my whole like sleeping situation because I broke the like show up where you're going to sleep, ready to sleep rule. And slightly regretted it. I just knew I attracted attention, so I moved on. Like, nobody came up and said anything, but I knew I attracted attention, so I moved on. And then since I got my new stove, I've maybe cooked in the actual car like 2 more times. I have cooked, like, I was at a work site, and everybody just thought it was cool because everybody else had to leave to get food, and I pull out this Coleman stove and like some food, and I'm like making myself some lunch on site, and I'm not wasting time driving to like some fast food place, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that you're so prepared. And some of them I just told the truth. I'm like, I'm living in my car, so everything I own is in there anyway. And some people I just smiled and nodded. It depended on what mood I was in, but everybody thought it was cool because I was at a work site. And so the fact that I didn't have to drive out and I could just pull stuff out of my car to cook with made me look very clever, I guess. So then, the other situation where I've used it is at rehearsal. We're at rehearsal all night. And, so sometimes when it's time for like a break, I'll just grab out my Coleman stove, turn it on. This is a small theater, so we're like in awkward little locations where there isn't always a full kitchen. Now, we are rehearsing at one space, which is actually a church, which has like a full kitchen. But even there, like, I didn't want to leave the rehearsal room too long, so I popped my Coleman on the table, and I think I had some top ramen, and I made myself some top ramen real quick. And people thought it was cool. They're like, whoa, you pulled out like a whole stove, and it was just not a situation to get totally into why I have a freaking Coleman stove in my car, and like I can go to it and grab like a meal. It makes me look like I'm a really cool pre-planner sometimes, but I've been reluctant, I noticed, to try and prepare food in the park again. And I think it was that first moment of somebody coming up to me and assuming, without asking me, without talking to me, what the state of my situation was. And at that point, it was a mental blow. And I have not attempted cooking in public again since then. So, breakfast at the shoreline, which is where I ended up going, was 100% turnaround from my last experience cooking outside. This lady actually walked up to me and started talking to me. She was awesome and friendly, and she thought my setup was pretty cool. She didn't really question why I was outside eating. She works from home, and she thought it was like a pretty cool idea because apparently her husband tells her that she should get out of the house, and she was like, oh, if I had this table and I had your setup, I could totally just like sit here and eat when I'm taking a break from work. And it was just like super positive, and like, yeah, she even thought like my little fake gorilla pod I had holding my cell phone was really cool. And we got into a discussion about iPhone versus Android, and she was convinced I worked in the tech industry. I was like, nah, I'm just a nerd. And it was just really nice to like meet this random person and have this really fun conversation and have her say like, you know, my setup was cool. So yeah, I ended up not filming as much. I'm going to cut together something of my cooking outside, but I ended up not filming as much because we had a really like nice conversation, and it was pretty cool.